rained, or we thought we were going to get money, and it didn't work out that way, or whatever it is. Occasionally, somebody will go, it's not good, don't do that. But we try to work through those issues. I'm taking up too much of people's time.
Well, along with the, we talked about the infamous letter that everybody gets. Sometimes we get those things like 2 months after the fact. We've been drinking that water for 2 months, and we get a letter saying you shouldn't have been doing that. What's wrong with it? What's the problem there? Robert, you got an answer for that?
Well, I can partially answer that. The disinfection byproduct rules, in particular what the city of Eufaula is getting, it's on a running annual average. So 1 month's data, you were out of compliance for a full year. And so that's where, as far as the disinfection byproducts go, it seems like you're always getting it 2 months after the fact, because by the time you get the test results in, by the time you get that and get through the DEQ and then get it out, it usually does take a couple months. Now, Mr. Thompson may speak a little bit different on this. That's on a non-chronic water quality issue. Now, if it was a chronic issue and it was like a turbidity issue or major health, public safety concerns, there's not a 2 month delay. You know, there's immediate action on something like that. But when you're looking at disinfection byproducts, I don't remember the exact statistics, but it takes 70 years of drinking 7 liters of water every day for 70 years, and you have a 7% chance, or 7 out of 10,000 chance of cancer. So a few months drinking that water over compared to 70 years is not critical as too.
5 kilograms.
Here's the difference.
5 kilograms is a little heavy.
That's right. I view those two things as, one's chronic. You got to drink a lot of it over a whole period of time, so 2 months or 3 months delay is not necessarily a problem. But I want to tell you something. If you got bugs in your water, we come to life. If you got bacteria in the water, we come to life. And we say we issue boil orders, boil advisories, and say you tell people not to drink that water until it's been boiled, and you better get about the business of figuring out where that bacteria has been introduced in the system and get it fixed. So it's the difference between bacteria that can really cause you some problems simply by its introduction, and something that is more chronic, that it's going to take a lot over a long time to cause you a problem.
Let's get a hypothetical statement here. Let's look out about 50 years. You guys are still busting your hump to provide good water coming out of your plants, but you're running them through some really raunchy pipes. Is that a problem with water quality?
Yeah, most definitely. Earlier when I mentioned that there's no one magic bullet, if you get the plant working perfect and it's putting out perfect water, but you're putting it into a subpar system, you're still going to have water quality issues. So it's everything has to come together. So it's not just one thing. It's a aggressive flushing program, for instance. It's a system of replacing pipes that are that deficient. So it's not I guess it didn't get this way overnight.
So is this a budget? Is this a budget thing? I mean, do you guys plan for it in advance? Like in the next 10 years, we're going to have to replace that 20 miles of line, or?
That really comes down to specifically at a local government level, but as far as long-range planning goes, there's always improvements planned. There's always something being replaced. Dennis, I know there's a project, I don't mean to speak for Dennis, but my company's also the consulting engineers for them, and we right now have got some improvements to upgrade their water tanks, to clean them out, to put recirculation in. So water districts are always, if you're not always making improvements, you're falling behind.
I will say, you mentioned water for 2060 earlier. We don't want to use any more water in 50 years than we are today. Well, if you have, and it's not uncommon at all, 25, 30, 40% loss in distribution lines, you're 30% there without having to do anything. Yes. That's just lost, and money out the window.
And fixing water systems costs money. It costs money. That's what it does. It costs money to do law. You have to have a plan and you have to have a funding mechanism for that. Maybe everybody, the mayor can tell me if I'm wrong, maybe everybody in Eufaula, when the city council meets and says, we're going to raise water rates by $5 a month in order to have the infrastructure to improve the system. Everybody in town jumps up and says, goody, what a wonderful idea. I don't think $5 is enough. Let's go to 10. You think that's the way that works? I don't like this. I don't like it enough that I don't use it. But cities are under all kinds of pressure from their citizens about rates, and that has to be so. In order, if you're going to do that, you got to figure out what you're going to charge and have a plan to implement.
So Dennis, you have to buy your water from the storage, wherever the storage is. You buy your water from them.
No,
No,
I buy the storage space to hold it in.
water's free.
Yeah, the water's free,
Right.
but you have to buy the storage space.
I pay.
That's the way it was explained to me several times. I still don't understand that.
Oh, I got it written down here. So anyway, my water costs me $90 a month. What do you do with that money?
Well, I just had a load of chemical come in day before yesterday. This load of chemical cost me $10,000. This chemical, right now, the lake is, if the lake doesn't get any dirtier, that will last me about 3 months. About every month I have another chemical that comes in. This is $2,000 every time they drop it off. When you see these guys out there and they're fixing that little bitty leak in your service line between, right beside your meter, it's probably costing them $150 to $200 to fix that leak, just for the parts. If you see them down in the ditch where they're fixing a 6 to an 8 inch, that cost just went up into the thousands of dollars. Everything costs money. A couple of things I'll touch on real quick here. Number one, the EPA just passed a new no lead law. Effectively raised the cost of all the brass parts 25 to 30%. That's all the meter loops. Most of the repair parts that we use has 25 to 30% increase. Okay, the EPA just came out with a new rule this year that caught a lot of systems. This is on the sewer side. It's called a fecal chloroform test. I went from having to test this stuff once a month at a cost of about $75 to twice a week. My cost went from $75 a month to almost $700 a month, just in testing on the sewer plant. Every time I turn around, we are facing a cost increase. Now, one thing that I want to get across to everybody, we're not just talking about our local water systems. We are talking about the entire infrastructure of this country. Mm-hmm. We're not the only ones that are having trouble with this. Yeah. If you look back, the last major infrastructure project this country did was the interstate system. Yeah. I mean, we cannot, it's like buying a car 25 years ago and expecting it to last another 50 years. It just ain't gonna happen.
We are really fortunate that in this area, we really don't have to worry about a water supply.
That's very true.
Major metropolitan areas are in serious trouble on water supply.
Real quick, I lived for 12 years in Las Vegas, Nevada. When at one point for about a year, I moved up to the northern end of the lake, a little town called Overton. Right now, today, when I lived there, I was 6.5 miles from a boat dock. Today, the house that I lived in is 15.5 miles from the water because Lake Mead just went down that far.
If I was going to get my water tested at the tap, how would I go about that?
It depends on what you want to get it tested for. If you want to run it through,
Both.
okay, probably the best thing to do would be to find a state certified lab or find out the lab that the local water company sends it to. The state runs a lab. There are several independent labs. I myself use an independent lab. I find I get much better service. I just do. But there's several places, the water company that you get your water from, whether it's you follow, whether it's me, Longtown, they can tell you who their lab is.
So give your local superintendent a call or the office a call and find out where you can get it tested.
Yeah, they can.
You mentioned something about lead a while ago. Does your treatment take heavy metals out of the water?
No. You really have to treat heavy metals differently. We're fairly lucky. The area we're pulling out of, we really don't have any problems with any metals. I think there's a few places on Lake Eufaula that, I don't know, Robert probably know more about that, but there's a few places that have some manganese, or is there any?
Well, iron and manganese, but that's not necessarily heavy metal.
Yeah, but I don't really deal with it, so.
Okay.
I think you might be referring to like lead and copper rule, which you've probably heard a lot about, and that has a lot to do with the corrosivity of the water. One of the things that the water plant guys do is they get their water stable, and unstable water will leach out, like houses that have lead piping, copper piping. If it's corrosive water, it'll pull that out of the house piping so that at the tap it'll have lead and copper. But if the water source, and these guys are doing their stability tests, that stable water won't leach those metals out that are present in the homes.
Other than well, maybe even more than the disinfection byproduct rule, the lead and copper rule is the most hated rule in the history of rules. Because what you have to do is find people who are willing to have their house water tested at the tap. Because the lead and copper are in the plumbing in the house. That's where it is. And then lead and copper shows up in the water, and the system says, got lead or copper in your house, and then essentially you're kind of done. There's no obligation for the homeowner to do anything about it. They just notify. We've argued for years that they ought to do completely away with the lead and copper rule and have a stringent rule relative to pH, to stability, and that way you check the stability of the water, and if that's the case, generally you won't get as high levels of lead and copper, but there you are. Still do it.
This is kind of a political question. How will the consolidations of the Secretary of Environment and Energy positions into one cabinet post affect the state DEQ and the Oklahoma Water Resources Board?
I don't have a clue.
Derek?
Dennis had the answer.
Like most things in life, it depends on the person.
It gets that cabinet.
It depends on who gets that job. I mean, so many things are like that. If you get someone who is all energy, no environment, it could be terrible. If you get someone that disengages completely, it could be terrible. And it will boil down to the type of person that gets that job.
You guys have any comments on that? Brian?
I tend to agree with him. It's going to be the person, not the
Who fills the job?
consolidation.
Not the office.
I guess this is more of a question than a comment. What evidence is there a need for that combination? Is there argument we're seeing that forces that issue for me?
Wouldn't you think that's part of the streamlining of government?
That's what I think. I think this is about,
Doesn't necessarily make sense. It's just part of the process.
It's political.
I think it's about, the governor has a big emphasis on consolidation and streamlining of state government, and if she's going to push that particular agenda, when she has the opportunity in her cabinet to do that, she's going to do it, just to further the.
Any other questions? These were not my questions, by the way. Y'all done a whale of a job. Good questions, good responses. Another round of applause. I think it's great. Good job. I want the people that put this meeting together to please stand up. Sharon, Don, David, Penny, my wife, Barbara Sue. These folks all helped get this meeting together, so thank you guys very much. I don't have any more pieces of paper that says I have anything to say.
I thought this was the best, in the top two presentations that we've had. You know, being parallel with Larry Derryberry, which,
You guys,
Larry Derryberry saying something. And I learned so much, and I really, are there any questions that we didn't ask that you want us to know? Because I know you had your presentation, but were there questions you wished we would have asked?
Well,
Didn't ask?
Somebody asked, you asked a minute ago, cost me $90 for my water bill. I don't want to be around. In fact, I'm not going to be around much longer. But I don't want to be the guy, and I don't think your state representatives here want to be the guy that says, you know, we really need to go consolidate water districts in this state because these economies of scale that you can get from consolidate, you know, if you've got a fixed cost and you've got 50 customers, and you can spread that cost among 100 customers, your rates go down, or they may not go down, but it's more easy to address the rising cost of the supply of water. But I can tell you from past experience, when you say to systems, you need to consolidate with this system over here in order to reduce the cost to your customers, everybody likes their own system. Everybody likes their own system. So I don't know how close these guys are to being term limited, and I know they don't want to. I don't want to address